inequality. It's crucial that we support our societies, and we believe that with this new generation of young people that are coming to work with us, we will make forward steps. So I'd like to congratulate my colleagues here at the IPU for the work that they've done, and I think we've really opened up a new forum for that change to take place. Thank you.
Thank you. Will Speaker of New Zealand take the floor, please, followed by the Speaker of Portugal.
Tihe Māori ora, e ngā mana, e ngā reo, e rau rangatira mā, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Mā lola sui fu maua malelangia mamā, assalamu alaikum, sastrikal, shalom, namaste, and warm Pacific greetings. Mr. Chair, distinguished guests and colleagues, it is a privilege to be here to share with you a perspective from a Kiwi Samoan living in New Zealand. My name is Dr. Anai Neruli-Avasa, and I'm the MP for Takanini, which takes in a constituency from South and East Auckland. We have a diverse population, 41.9% originate from Asia, 31.9% from Europe, 21% Pacific, and the fourth largest being our Māori indigenous people. We have a very young population as well. Just over a third are under 24 and over 2/3 are under 45 years old. We have Christian churches, Hindu temples, mosques, Sikh temples, and so forth, which I've had a real privilege of building relationships across our faith communities. I share these things to say that peaceful coexistence and inclusive societies begin at home. Fighting intolerance begins at home. As a young parliamentarian, I believe engaging our youth is one important avenue to promote peace and inclusive societies. The sharing of ideas, cultures, values, and our differences helps in improving understanding and therefore tolerance. We engage our youth in New Zealand with having youth parliament each term. However, I've extended that to having an active youth council for my constituency of Takanini. I asked them, what do you want me to share on this international platform? Because it's so important to hear the voices of our youth. And let me just summarize their thoughts. And this is youth of Takanini under 24 years old. They have said, as a global family, let us use our minds to understand each other, our ears to listen to each other, our eyes to see each person in their context, and our mouths to speak life into each other with a heart of respect. So on that note, whawhatai mole awa noa, thank you for the opportunity to share. So I fua mai manuia, kia ora.
Thank you. Well, Ms. Speaker of Portugal, and take the floor, please, followed by the Speaker of Bureau.
Well, dear colleagues, we cannot talk about inclusive societies and the promotion of peaceful coexistence without recognizing the role of young people in building a safe, cohesive and harmonious society. Young people have always been at the forefront of democratic struggles. They are the most prominent protagonists in increasing social mobilization. They continue, however, to be among those most affected by multiple forms of violence and to suffer over time from its devastating consequences, whether human, social, or economic. More than 600 million young people live in fragile environments and are the target of conflicts. Climate change, human trafficking, unemployment, social exclusion have direct impacts and lead to increasing marginalization, the rise of populism, hate speech and xenophobia, leading to violent radicalization that affects the defense and promotion of democratic values, our multicultural identity and peace. Therefore, young people should and want to be active players in maintaining and promoting peace and security as agents of change towards an inclusive and peaceful society. It is therefore fundamental to adopt policies that encourage peaceful discourses in young people from an early age and that provide them with opportunities to participate in democratic governance and in conflict prevention and resolution. Because this is everyone's cause for a more inclusive world with more freedom, more equality, and more respect for human dignity. Young people say, yes, we are here, and we will fight together for a better world with dialogue and peace. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker of Bureau can take the floor, please, followed by the Speaker of Japan.
Excellencies, representatives of member countries, my multi-ethnic, multilingual, multicultural country has different practices, customs, and ways of seeing life. These differences have led to inequalities and discrimination. The President of the Republic, Pedro Castillo, of course, was the subject of a coup d'etat, and there was the issue of lying to our companions. Unfortunately, this has given rise to a lot of hatred for racial reasons, economic and social reasons as well. In the world, we need to promote positive relationships and mutual respect, develop capabilities of citizens over and above cultural and social differences, battle discrimination and exclusion with a view to a fair, egalitarian, and pluralistic democracy. Finally, I would like to congratulate the host country on the outstanding organization of this 146th IPU Assemble. I thank the Kingdom of Bahrain for its hospitality in Quechua, the language of the Incas. I wish our work great success for all of us meeting here in this forum. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Will the Speaker of Japan to take the floor, please, followed by the Speaker of Bolivia.
ندارم صدای انگلیسی رو نداری رو ترجمه در کشورهای دموکراتیک توقع میره از قانونگذار که تفاوت آرا و نظرات رو انعکاس بدن.
Functions by politicians with similar views and values coming together to form groups. The group that holds the majority commands legislative power. When only a single group holds power in a society, that group's view and ideas become the norm, resulting naturally in a loss of diversity and inclusiveness. At times, it can also result in intolerance or discrimination against conflicting views and ideas. To keep this from happening, it is important that we think of our legislatures not as a collection of parties, but as a collection of diverse politicians. Our legislature floors should not be the site of power struggles between political parties, in which individual legislators are bound to toe the party line. They should more serve as forums to which individual politicians can bring a diversity of views and ideas and reflect them into the nation's decision-making process through free expression and vigorous debate. In this context, majority and minority should not even refer to the rigid concepts of ruling party versus opposition party. The number of votes for and against is different each time, and legislatures are meant to function such that the majority and minority shifts regularly and irrespective of party lines. I believe that if each of us works in our respective legislatures with that attitude, we would be able to contribute to the promotion of peaceful coexistence and an inclusive society. Thank you.
Thank you. Will the Speaker of Bolivia take the floor, please? Followed by Speaker of Netherlands.
Muy buenas.
Good evening to you all. I'm here at the 146th IPU Assembly and wish to send greetings to all parliamentarians present. My name is Alessandra Rodriguez. I'm a young woman parliamentarian from Bolivia. I come from the Amazon region, which comprises over 30 indigenous peoples and 40% of species in the world in terms of fauna and flora. Indigenous peoples have no vote in global parliamentary fora. Therefore, I want to talk about what we're suffering from. Owing to the government, which doesn't promote peaceful coexistence for the indigenous peoples, on the contrary, it divides them up. Yesterday, the president of the plurinational state of Bolivia said that to the United Nations in Vienna that it's necessary to respect the legitimate rights of people in terms of their traditions in the face of industrialization and marketing of coca as a plant. But the reality is quite different. It's an indigenous area, a national park, but it's being destroyed by the governments in turn. It's an area where coca leaves are being raised, and lots of Indians have to leave the area. Coca is a sacred plant in our tradition. They are creating hatred and social exclusion. They are creating a lucrative business on an illicit footing. Of course, Bolivia is being called to account for narco-trafficking, and there are packages that arrive full of coca leaves from Bolivia. But I am in favor of the environment and our traditions. In Bolivia, we need great tolerance. We are different, yet we're being put into prison for political reasons in Bolivia. And I would ask that at this forum, consideration be taken of indigenous peoples so that we can have a full democracy. Thank you.
Thank you. Will the Speaker of Netherlands can take the floor, please, followed by Speaker of Tanzania.
Honourable Chair, distinguished colleagues, the concept note for this general debate opens in an alarming tone. The world is becoming a more divided and less tolerant and peaceful place. Alarming, but also realistic, as many of us can underline from their personal experience. And sometimes it seems that the quote attributed to Cicero, "When weapons speak, the laws fall silent," is painfully true. We live through challenging times, and I am glad that the IPU urges to work towards peaceful coexistence, inclusive societies, and fighting intolerance. Someone who pointed this out long before the IPU was even founded was my 17th century fellow countryman Hugo de Groot. A theologian and a brilliant lawyer, Hugo de Groot laid some of the cornerstones of today's international public law, but also a fundament for human rights as we know them these days. The Holy Bible teaches us, give justice to the weak, maintain the right of the afflicted and the destitute. And in that line, Hugo de Groot emphasized the importance of making laws that enhance freedom of belief and religion, freedom of speech, and access to justice. Laws that contribute to peaceful resolution of conflicts instead of warfare. As lawmaking is one of the key functions of parliaments, I respectfully paraphrase Hugo de Groot's call upon every one of us holding this responsible position. Let us be guardians of the rule of law, deliverers of justice and peace, strivers for human rights, so that even in times of crisis and when weapons speak, the laws may never be silent. Shukran. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Will Ms. Speaker of Tanzania take the floor, please? She will be the last speaker of the deed list.
Yes, Mr. President, all the members of the IPU in this assembly, dear young members of the parliament, good afternoon. Youth in Tanzania consists of a very heterogeneous group with a variety of needs determined by age, sex, marital status, educational levels, residence, and other socio-economic characteristics. According to the Integrated Labor Force Survey of 2021, the total youth population in Tanzania mainland stands as 17.71 million, of whom male are 8.4 million, which is 48%, and female are 9.3, of which is 52% of 17.7 youth population. 14.2 million youth labor force is active, and the remaining 3.5 million are inactive. This implies that a large population of youth, which is 80.3%, are ready to participate in the production of goods and service with high rate of male at 2.4% as compared to female, of which are 78.3%. Out of the active youth population, 12.5 million are employed and 1.7 million are unemployed. Tanzania as a country has always recognized the importance of youth in all aspects of the country's development. Thus, it has had the plans for youth development since independence, where in the 1970s, the government established a specific unit at the ministry of level to coordinate youth affairs, where it is continued to expand into a department since 1990s. The role of youth in promoting peaceful coexistence and inclusive societies, the contribution of young people in Tanzania in maintaining peace is great, and peace cannot be achieved if they are not evolved, because the youth are good agents of peace if they are properly contained. The government of the United Republic of Tanzania has made effort of enacting various laws, policies, regulations, and guidelines to ensure productive participation of community, especially youth, in matters of peace and security. These efforts include the enactment of the Prevention Terrorism Act of 2002, the national guidelines for the Office of Defense and Security, the Prevention of Terrorism regulations, and various criminal laws. Along with these efforts, the government has continued to create an enabling environment and cooperation with the development stakeholders in motivating the community, especially the youth, to live in peace and stability, as well as community, especially as providing training to empower women and youth economically and in leadership, self-awareness, independence, and encouraging the good use of social networks in order to maintain peace. I so submit, Mr. President, and I thank you so much.
Thank you. We have the last speaker from the deal list from Ukraine. Will you take the floor, please?
honorable IPU delegates, friends, distinguished colleagues. I'm supposed to speak to you about promoting peaceful coexistence, inclusion societies, and fighting intolerance as a young member of parliament. But it is incredibly difficult to talk to you in 2 minutes, being a young member of parliament and a woman from a country that faces a war of aggression from another IPU member, a Russian Federation. I was never prepared to do that. And I was never prepared to talk about intolerance when Ukraine is facing the worst kind of intolerance, which is a genocide, killings of our people, of civilians, of women, of children every day. The thing that keeps me still inspired, it keeps me strong, is that the world is united towards an aggressor, is that the world is united in saying that each territorial sovereignty and integrity of each state still matters something, that IPU principles, UN principles still matters. And I'm incredibly grateful for you all for the support that you showed women and kids of Ukraine and us every day. I'm incredibly grateful that you condemned the invasion of Ukraine by Russia and annexation, illegal annexation by our territories by Russian parliamentarians who are present here, unfortunately, last year in our assembly in Kigali on the 14th of October. But unfortunately, I have counted the number of strikes Russia did against my country since then, because since October, more than 1,327 missiles and rockets were sent from Russia to Ukrainian civilians and killed more than 41 children only during the past 6 months. The invasion continues, the war of aggression continues, the genocide continues, and this is the worst form of intolerance. I think that we as an IPU can do more, and should react on that. It is our duty as parliamentarians to speak about this, to stop it, and to talk about the ways how to implement previous IPU resolutions. Thank you for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have the speaker from Bureau, from the seal list. You can take the floor, please.
Gracias.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Professor Palacios, and I belong to the parliamentary group of the Bloque Magistral, which comprises 10 teachers. We'd like to congratulate the IPU on the wonderful organization of this 146th IPU Assembly. Likewise, we'd like to thank the people of Bahrain and its government for the warm hospitality. Peaceful coexistence, historically speaking, this calls for giving up war as a way of solving disputes of all natures. It calls for understanding and reciprocal cooperation between all the players concerned. It means non-interference in the domestic affairs of countries, the fostering of economic and cultural cooperation between countries. Peace is not just the absence of conflict. It calls for the participation of all men, women, children in order to live in harmony with the land. It also calls for respect for all citizens and the belief that everyone deserves to be treated equally. No one should be viewed as inferior. Therefore, there are two players that need to be protected and preserved. We have to create a humanizing society and preserve the family, where citizens of the future are born and raised. Second, school, because there children and teenagers learn about human rights and receive quality education. We must try to create laws that strengthen the family and education, therefore. And only then can there be peaceful coexistence when we realize how important education and the family is in terms of transmitting humanizing values. Inclusive societies. An inclusive society considers that all the people have the same rights because they're human beings. When a society fails to recognize the same value for all its members, then human dignity is being undermined and there is inequality and indignity. One of the greatest challenges in an inclusive society is to have an educational system that promotes inclusion policies and practices so all students have the same possibility to learn fundamental knowledge. Finally, eliminating intolerance is absolutely necessary. Intolerance is inhuman, and it's often based on hate language. In our parliaments, we must sanction hate speech because it generates violence. Thank you.
Thank you all for participating in this debate, which is now closed. If you allow me to speak in Arabic. والآن نقف مع كلمة لمركز الملك حمد العالمي.
Now we shall listen to a statement from the King Hamad Global Center for Peaceful Coexistence. This is a center which enshrines the principles of history and culture and the civilization of Bahrain over the centuries. It is open to all religions and cultures, and it seeks to strengthen the principles and values of coexistence. This center looks and studies coexistence between countries and peoples. It seeks to reinforce peaceful coexistence and teach about the importance of knowing about civilizations in order to lay the foundations of international coexistence. Likewise, to combat intolerance and hatred, terrorism, and to reinforce the values of pluralism in the society of Bahrain. Mrs. Betsy Matheson, Deputy Chairwoman of the Council of this Center, will now take the floor. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, good afternoon. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, good afternoon and welcome to the Kingdom of Bahrain, where we are honored to host the 146th Inter-Parliamentary Union Assembly with the theme of promoting peaceful coexistence and inclusive societies, fighting intolerance. This theme works perfectly with the work of the King Hamad Global Center for Peaceful Coexistence, and I have listened with great interest to the debates and speeches over the last few days, and it is clear that the delegates here are genuinely committed to these lofty goals. The King Hamad Global Center for Peaceful Coexistence was created by royal order of His Majesty King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa in 2018. The King Hamad Global Center bases its work on the inclusive and diverse society of the Kingdom of Bahrain. Multicultural, multi-faith communities living harmoniously in an inclusive and diverse society is not new to Bahrain. Bahrain has always been an oasis of peace and love, where all cultures, faiths, and ethnicities are not simply tolerated, but are warmly embraced and respected as members of the Bahraini family in the spirit of mutual respect and love which prevails in the kingdom. The Kingdom of Bahrain has centuries of evidential history to support this. From circa the 4th to the 7th centuries AD, the North Island of Muharraq was a major center of Christianity. Around this time, Christians in the region were targeted for persecution by the Byzantine Empire, and the Nestorian Christians of the Church of the East found a safe haven here in Bahrain. And archaeological evidence is still being uncovered today that further supports this. Bahrain has always recognized the importance of religious freedom, hosting the first church in the region in 1904, the first synagogue in the region in 1935, and the oldest Hindu temple, where we have just celebrated Holi, in the whole of the region, which was established in 1817, making it over 200 years old. Today, Bahrain has many hundreds of mosques, the magnificent new Our Lady of Arabia Cathedral, the largest ever built in the Arabian Peninsula, and many churches and temples that serve the needs of the faithful, with religious services being delivered in over 10 languages. Bahrainis and expatriates alike were enjoying the right to freedom of religion or belief over 150 years before the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights addressed this in Article 18 in 1948. Today, His Majesty King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa passionately and sincerely continues the historic commitment of his noble ancestors to religious freedom. And this right is enshrined in Article 22 of the Constitution of Bahrain. Today, we live in a world where terrorists and extremists use religion for their evil intent. There is a global increase in religiously motivated hate crimes, with the cyberspace being used to radicalize and sow the seeds of hate and violence. While we may be fortunate enough to be able to worship freely, there are many who are not so fortunate. Statistics reveal that up to 80% of the world's population live in areas where religious freedom is either denied or severely restricted. His Majesty the King was so moved by these statistics that he authored the Kingdom of Bahrain Declaration. I think you may find this at your seats. The Kingdom of Bahrain Declaration launched in 2017, and it calls for religious freedom for all peoples of the world. And the Kingdom of Bahrain Declaration has been universally acknowledged as one of the most important and influential declarations of our time. Today, the world's population stands at 8 billion. This means that over 6.4 billion people's lives are not blessed with freedom or religion or belief. Your Excellencies, esteemed delegates, let's be clear, peaceful coexistence is impossible without freedom of religion or belief. And without it, sadly, wars and conflicts will continue to devastate our world. Post-COVID, and in the midst of serious conflicts, the global economy is suffering badly. Research has shown that the Religious Freedom Index and the economic prosperity of a country are directly linked. The higher the Religious Freedom Index in a country, the higher the economic prosperity of that country. So it makes sense, not just from a human rights perspective, but also from an economic perspective, that governments consider paying more attention to this most fundamental of human rights. His Majesty King Hamad's opening words in the Kingdom of Bahrain Declaration.
جاءت كلمات جلالة الملك في فاتحة هذا الإعلان على النحو الآتي: الجهل هو عدو السلام. ويركز المركز العالمي للملك حمد على البرامج التثقيفية للشباب، تشمل الكرسي الأكاديمي للملك حمد بشأن الحوار بين الثقافات والتعايش السلمي في لا سابينسا، وهي جامعة في روما، وتقدم برامج ماجستير ودكتوراه، وتقدم أيضا إمكانية الالتحاق بمدرسة صيفية مفتوحة أمام طلاب من 60 بلدا. كذلك هناك برامج للزمالة بالتعاون مع جامعتي أكسفورد وكامبريدج في المملكة المتحدة، حيث أيضا يستطيع الطلاب أن يصبحوا مدربين مرخصين في هذا البرنامج، وهذا مسار مهني مهم جدا ومثير للاهتمام. باتوا الآن يسافرون حول العالم بصفتهم مدربين ومدرسين يقدمون المواد التعليمية ويتعلمون أيضا من طلابهم. كذلك ثمة برامج للتعليم بشأن الجرائم التي تدفعها الكراهية والتنمر والعنف، وكل ذلك عن طريق تطبيقات إلكترونية وبرامج للتعلم الإلكتروني للبالغين وللأطفال. كذلك ميدالية الملك حمد للتعايش السلمي التي تمنح للمجتمعات المحلية والأقليات من أجل تكريمها لمساهمتها في الغناء الثقافي الدولي. كذلك قمنا بتوقيع مذكرات للتفاهم مع جملة من الشركاء بما في ذلك يونيتار أي معهد الأمم المتحدة للتدريب والأبحاث، حيث استضفنا فعاليات على هامش الجمعية العامة للأمم المتحدة في نيويورك في سبتمبر أيلول من عام 2022. كذلك لدينا مذكرة تفاهم مع وزارة الخارجية من أجل إنشاء مكتب للمبعوث الخاص لمكافحة معاداة السامية، وكذلك لدينا مكتب معني بشؤون المرأة والأسرة وحقوق الإنسان. هذا الإعلان، إعلان الملك حمد، وثيقة تأسيسية لعملنا ليس فقط في مملكة البحرين بل حول العالم. ترجم هذا الإعلان إلى لغات عدة ويستخدمه المثقفون والمدرسون والقادة الدينيون ومنظمات المجتمع المدني، وحاليا يتم تدريس هذا الإعلان ضمن المناهج التدريسية في المدارس. هذه الوثيقة وثيقة مقدامة وشجاعة، صيغت بلغة بسيطة ومتاحة للجميع، مصممة لتصل إلى صميم قلب كل رجل وامرأة وطفل في كوكبنا. هكذا لمس هذا الإعلان قلب قداسة البابا فرانسيس الذي اقتبس من هذا الإعلان في خلال زيارته الرسولية إلى البحرين في نوفمبر تشرين الثاني في عام 2022. واستلهاما من هذه الزيارة الرسولية ومن كلمات جلالة الملك، استضاف مركز الملك حمد مؤتمر ليومين في روما تحت عنوان الجهل عدو السلام، وكذلك احتفلنا رسميا بإطلاق إعلان مملكة البحرين. بعد إذن تم تنظيم زيارة وندوة للشباب بشأن التعايش السلمي، وكذلك نظم مؤتمر ليومين بشأن الجريمة السيبرانية وكيف بإمكاننا أن نستخدم الفضاء السيبراني لمكافحة التعصب وبناء التعايش السلمي. وقد انضم إلى هذا المؤتمر المجموعة العاملة المعنية بحرية التعبير والمعتقد الديني. يعمل هذا المركز بصورة دؤوبة من أجل تحقيق أهداف التنمية المستدامة، ونركز بصورة خاصة على الهدف السادس عشر، أي تعزيز التعايش السلمي والمجتمعات الشاملة من أجل التنمية المستدامة وإتاحة الاحتكام إلى العدالة والانتصاف أمام الجميع بصورة متساوية، وكذلك تعزيز المؤسسات الفعالة والقادرة على كل المستويات. وأيضا الهدف السابع عشر، تعزيز أدوات التنفيذ وإعادة بث الحياة في
Dear delegates, we are actively looking for new partners and would be happy to meet like-minded partners for such future collaboration.
للقاء مزيد من الشركاء من أجل التعاون معهم. يسرني كذلك أن أعلن لكم اليوم عن أن المركز الدولي
EU Bahrain Conference on Freedom of Religion or Belief in Bahrain from the 2nd to the 4th of May 2023. The theme of this year's conference is twofold. Number one, cyberspace as a means to decrease terrorism and increase the peace index through freedom of religion or belief. And number two, the impact of climate change on freedom of religion or belief. I note that these are two areas of concern to the esteemed delegates of this assembly, and I warmly invite you all to join us in Bahrain for this special conference, where we can continue these important conversations together. Further details of the conference and copies of the Kingdom of Bahrain Declaration and other publications are available at the King Hamad Global Center stand, where myself and members of our Board of Trustees will be waiting to warmly welcome you after this presentation today. So please do visit us. I would now like to congratulate you all on this important assembly and to thank you all for your hard work and your heartfelt dedication in the pursuit of a more just and peaceful world for all. No one should underestimate or underappreciate the vital importance of your work. In conclusion, I noted with interest that the concept note for the general debate invited member parliaments to answer certain questions, including: what role could collective parliamentary action play in helping address drivers of intolerance or promote inclusion and peaceful coexistence? A very good question. Today, I humbly call on the esteemed delegates of the 146th Inter-Parliamentary Union to endorse and adopt the Kingdom of Bahrain Declaration as an IPU collective action to promote inclusion and peaceful coexistence and extinguish the flames of intolerance. This would be a truly noble outcome from such a distinguished and revered assembly of parliamentarians. The King Hamad Global Centre for Peaceful Coexistence applauds you all, and we clearly state our willingness to move forward with all of you on this crucial path to peace for humankind. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll take 5 minutes break, please.
calls for Andris Grifroy, Peter Verkamen, Beate Walter Rosenheimer, Ralph Brinkhaus, Katalin Sador, Arda Gerkens, Jan-Heinrich Halsma, and to the Ukrainian delegation. And of course, to Nora Babic and all the IPU staff. At the drafting committee, we managed to strengthen the language to clearly state our shared objective, which is to raise awareness of the meaning of living in a world where 1 out of 23 people, that means 340 million people, are out there and desperate for in need. Wars must end, civil wars stop, climate change be fought. Most of the humanitarian crises that we are raising awareness of are sadly underreported, and some are long forgotten. We also know that women and children are the main victims of this humanitarian crisis. We express our particular concern for Afghani women suffering under the oppressive Taliban regime, the 7 million Ukrainian women scattered throughout Europe, and were deeply disturbed with the assassination of Mrs. Mursal Nabizada. Mr. President, we ask the Assembly to adopt this emergency item, hopefully by consensus, and hopefully with very few abstentions, hopefully none, to send a clear and unified message to millions of Yemenis, Afghanis, Ukrainians, Syrians, Venezuelans, South Sudanese, Congolese, Iraqis, Pakistanis, Nigerians, Haitians, Nicaraguan, Burundi, Myanmar, and so many more, especially women and children suffering the consequences of this crisis. A message that the world have not forgotten them. A message that we care and that we understand that we have to do more. In the end, overcoming misery, violence, and starvation, it is no task of charity. It is an act of justice. Shukran, muchas gracias. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards, for the work you have done. You achieve a consensus that we all know how difficult it is in a drafting committee with different perspectives about the issue to reach the consensus. Thank you all the members of IPU that participate in this process. Dear colleague, okay, I just say that if it is one point of order, I will give the floor to Paraguay, because in accordance with the Article 32.2, if any delegation wish to explain their votes briefly, of course, or to present a reserve, should do it after the adoption to take place. And so this is the rules. That's why I said that I hope that Paraguay that wish to raise the floor should be a point of order. Please, Paraguay. Where is Paraguay? Ah, it's there.
Gracias, President.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be very brief. I just wanted to congratulate the drafting committee and second the motion to approve this emergency item. Thank you.
Okay. So, I will ask if you are in the conditions to adopt the resolution. No opposition, no abstentions. It may be approved by acclamation. It's adopted, and so I will ask the floor if someone, very briefly, wish to say that have a reservation on each point. If no one each, much better. Yemen. I think there is a micro.
Okay.
Okay.
My reservation is that أو تحفظي على هذا.
Mr. President, I have a reservation to express about this resolution. My reservation is because it ignored one of the most protracted humanitarian crises, and it is that of the Palestinian people. It is a multifaceted, a multidimensional humanitarian crisis. Therefore, it is unfortunate for us to see that here, within an assembly of the IPU, such a calamity that has been so prolonged is being ignored. And no solidarity was expressed in this resolution with the Palestinian people that is being oppressed, whose parliament's members are being sometimes imprisoned, whose parliamentary elections are being prohibited. All of those practices have to be condemned and denounced so that we can still believe in the justice of the work of the IPU. Such a crisis has to be mentioned. It is a protracted crisis that has been ongoing for more than 70 years now. That's why I would like to express my reservation.
Thank you. Thank you. Your colleague, you have the right to express your reservation. I just wish to express that on point 27, there is a reference on Palestine. And so maybe Your Excellency, you don't have time to read all the document since the beginning until the end, but the reference to Palestine is there on point 27. But India abstain. Okay. Thank you, dear colleagues. No more. And so, chat, please.
Thank you, sir. We would like to congratulate the committee that did this work. We feel that they have done some excellent work. We have been excluded, however. We have over 1 million refugees and displaced persons in our country. So under 27, it's necessary to include Chad, please. That is our request.
Thank you. Mali, yes. This way it's easy to read if you put in horizontal. Mali.
Merci.
Thank you very much. I agree with Chad. We also have large numbers of refugees from war who've been in our country for over 15 years. Thank you.
Mali, as I understood, is also on chapter, what point?
Same
27 as well. Yes, I saw.
Oui, tout à fait.
Iraq, Mali, Myanmar, Nicaragua, Nigeria, Palestine, Somalia, and the Sudan. So on point 27, we have a reference also to the situation of Mali, because we needed to be worried, of course, with our show solidarity with our colleagues of Mali. Niger.
Merci.
Thank you, President. Similar to other countries in the region of the Sahel, that is Chad and Burkina Faso, in Niger, we also have a massive influx of refugees, in particular in the Lake Chad area. We have almost 600,000 refugees who have come to Niger. But it's not just Niger. in this report, I think you should include all the countries of the Sahel, because there isn't a single country in the Sahel where there are no refugees, either internally displaced people or external refugees. Thank you.
Thank you. We all know, dear colleagues, that the countries of Sahel suffered a lot with terrorism, and so with refugees that try to run away from the radicalism and the extremism organizations in this region. And so it is a real problem that we as IPU address frequently, and we will come back to it very soon. Secretary, our Secretary General, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do understand that this was raised, this issue of the number of countries affected by the refugee influx was raised in the drafting committee, and the way that you addressed it, Mr. Rapporteur, you may want to confirm, was to include that reference to including but not limited to, so that it is open-ended. Of course, you may want to take note of those proposals that have been made to add Mali, not Mali, because Mali is on that list. I think it's Niger, and then you, what? And Chad, and then you can close that particular paragraph, because we do think that it is actually very inclusive of all the refugee situations in the world. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you for your help, Secretary General. As I told you in the beginning, when we have the grand difficulty in our organization is because we are a global one. Because when we have a regional parliamentary association, it can be European or just African or Latin America, the point of view will be more or less similar. And sometimes it is not this way, but it will be the probability to have this is more, is higher. Then we have a global organization with representation from all the continents and from countries that have different experience and different sensibilities to the same issue. And so sometimes the discussion, I was in the past member of drafting committees, the discussion about one word took hours, because for a country A, this word is fundamental, and for the country B, never he will agree to have this word in the final declaration. So it will never will be the declaration, ideal declaration for each country, because it's the consensus that was possible to obtain at the drafting committee. And again, thank you so much for all the efforts of our colleagues. Without your effort, we will not have a text in front of us to be approved, to be adopted, as it was, just with some few reserves that don't affect the result we had done. And thank you again for it. I think we did a great job. And so, allow me to go forward, because it was adopted by consensus, our declaration, to the other points of our agenda. Not yet. Secretary General, to add something, please.
Mr. President, I'm Mr. Procedure. I just want to make sure that the records of the organization are straight. I would like to use this opportunity to make a technical announcement regarding the record of the votes that were cast for on the occasion of the emergency item. That decision, that voting took place, you remember, yesterday. Was it yesterday or 2 days ago? And we were informed after the voting took place by a delegation, and I think I can call that delegation Spain, that its vote had, for proposal 3, had been recorded incorrectly. This was due to a technical hitch in the room during the roll call for the vote interrupted. So we looked at the situation and we've realized that correcting the votes does not change the overall outcome of the voting, but we just wanted to properly record the votes as recorded or registered by Spain. We have corrected that now, and this will be part of the record, and it will be reflected in the Assembly summary records. We just wanted, for reasons of transparency, to let you know about this. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Martin. I was near to have a heart attack. Because when they said we need to correct the results, I said, Mamma mia, if we need to come back and we discussed one item that was not the real one, it should be another one, it's better, I don't know what may happen, but thank God it didn't happen, so the correction did not, how we said, affected the final result. Mamma mia. Now, to the segment about accountability. We will discuss, dear friends, this segment that is relevant to the IPU because I defend that, and we all, because we approve our strategy. And when we approve it, we talk about accountability, that we should have accountability about the decisions we take during our assemblies. And so, welcome to this fourth edition of this special segment of the general debate. And accountability is for all members of parliament, to each member of parliament, to our parliaments, and between our assemblies. Otherwise, it seems that we came to an assembly of IPU, we approve a resolution, we take decisions, then we go home, and we forget it until the next assembly. In the middle while, we don't put in practice what we approve. We should do it. And so, this is a very important segment of the accountability with IPU declarations, resolutions, and outcomes, how we transform it to the national level in our countries and people. And a brief point of the upcoming 23 reporting exercise. Accountability on all levels means that the members of parliament, as per the IPU status, need to share details on results accomplished in follow-up decisions back to the organization. And to facilitate this process, each year a number of parliaments from each geopolitical group are designated to report and answer a questionnaire. Of course, all countries that decide to answer are very welcome. And this is the results we had this year. I'm trying to identify if the Portuguese flag is on the right side of the screen. I hope so. Because we should know, by transparency, all countries that answer, but also the countries that didn't have time to answer the inquiry of IPU. And this way, may will incentive for the future all the colleagues to push your parliaments to have a positive answer. The Portuguese flag is on the right side, thank God. And this way, it's good to understand that the countries should answer the inquiries of IPU. Why? It is a very, very important strategy reported by the Secretariat. We decided to have not to call every year all countries, because sometimes we have also many other answers to other international organizations that need to be given, and the parliamentarians and the staff has a lot of work to do. We understand that. That's why we choose small groups by rotation, and this way every 5 years everyone will be in our list. But we accept very well that by in a voluntary behavior, others decide to answer. If they decide, it's great, and we will accept it very well. And now we will have a discussion of this special segment. As I answered a few seconds ago, the strategy of IPU this year is focused on climate change. We will see that about the Grammy Pass Award. We will see that on the time we choose to the Assembly in Angola, and we try to incentive also to have this debate here. But allow me to say, this is just, and because it's really important. We, as IPU, we approve different resolutions on this issue, the Nusa Dua Declaration, the outcome document of the COP26, the IPU resolution of the parliamentary strategies to strengthen peace and security against threats and conflicts, and the IPU resolution of October 2019 about climate change. So we adopt a lot. But this is the recommendation. This is not one obligation, because in Kigali, we approve many other resolutions. And so this is the focus, but it is not just about it. If a person, a member of this assembly, wish to express how you implemented or the difficulties you felt to implement one of our IPU decisions, you are free, because it is a segment about accountability. We try to have a guideline, but just as a recommendation about it. And this way we will open the floor. Each one will have 3 minutes. We are very generous today. 3 minutes, and before we have the first one, we will see a video from Canada, and then I will give the floor to Ms. Raymond Saint-Germain from Canada itself. So, a small video, and then we have a list of speakers for 3 minutes each. The first one is Mrs. Raymond Saint-Germain from Canada, but before the video, please.
The number of bees is declining worldwide. To help the bee population, about 100,000 honeybees were given new homes beside the recently restored and modernized Senate of Canada building. The bees settled into 13 hives, one for each province and territory. The beehives are from a local family-run business and managed by the Fairmont Chateau Laurier as part of the hotel's sustainability program. The honey collected will be used in dishes served at the hotel. The beehives are just one way this building was made greener.
So, Mrs. Raymond Saint-Germain, please.
Thank you, sir. In terms of climate action, our challenge is a sizable one. We're one of the biggest exporters of fossil fuels in the world, and we have to contend with extreme environmental impacts. I'd like to say that Canada is getting hotter twice as fast as the rest of the planet. We have the obligation to act to eliminate CO2 from our buildings and from agriculture, to find effective means to capture and store this carbon, to find more solutions to maintain forests, prairies, humid areas, and regenerate areas. And we have other major challenges. We have to totally transform our economy while ensuring that no one will be left behind. The challenge is both political, environmental, social, and economic. Taking up such a challenge calls for ambition, and our targets are ambitious. What are our targets by 2030? Reduce our CO2 emissions by 45%, emissions compared with 2005, in accordance with our commitments under the Paris Agreement, and reach carbon neutrality by 2050. The government has the Parliament has voted in June 2021 a legislation which is decisive to attain this goal. It's a law on transparency and responsibility of Canada as part of its efforts to attain carbon neutrality by 2050. This law calls for the setting up of a planning and evaluation process, evaluation of progress in attaining the targets. After the implementation of the law, the Ministry of the Environment took stock of the situation in terms of environmental risk. This minister must publish a 5-year plan, and the Ministry of Finance is responsible for managing the economic risks, which are major ones. It therefore has to prepare an annual public report on the measures taken by the government to manage these risks and seize financial opportunities for economic reconversion. These two ministers have to be accountable to the two chambers of the Parliament. We have also set up an advisory group on carbon neutrality, a group which will advise the ministry. The minister has to publish the advice received from the group and explain the follow-up or the absence of follow-up action. Likewise, for the Minister of the Environment, has to take measures to attain our goals and must take account of the following factors: the best scientific data available, international commitments made by Canada, very important, native knowledge and observations by the advisory group. A guarantee of transparency and credibility is the fact that these ministerial reports will be heard by the two chambers in our Parliament. The Commissioner to the Environment and Sustainable Development reports directly to Parliament and will also have to draw up a report and attest the quality of the measures taken by the Government of Canada under this law. The Commissioner has to file his first report in June 2021. These two chambers of Parliament will look rigorously at government action according to this law, and in terms of accountability for carbon neutrality, it will report on findings